that was, unusually objective for a major news magazine story, when writers, more and more writers have this experience themselves and are putting this stuff out, there is an opening up of the discussion. And quite frankly, that marijuana discussion is beginning in little ways to open up too. When Bill Clinton, they didn't smoke it. And then it was Al Gore. Yeah, I did. Now, you get up to 1999 and year 2000, and Bill Bradley is, I smoked it. And when he was campaigning, he didn't do this on the East Coast, but went to California, he started smiling when he talked about it. And then, God bless him, Gary Johnson stands up in public and he says, well, wait a second, I don't get this. Alcohol, marijuana, college kids, young people, from what I remember about alcohol and marijuana, kids got drunk, they'd go out, they'd have reckless sex, they'd get behind the wheel of a car, they'd be sick. Blech. People smoke marijuana, give them a bag of potato chips and say, headphones are fine. Governor said that, and he meant it, and he didn't just say it once. Something is changing. All those kind of young guys around President Bush now, the 30, 40, 50-somethings, you think none of them smoke marijuana? Right. I'll tell you something. This drug, ayahuasca, I haven't tried it. It's another one. The religious piece of this thing, it's coming out. There's going to be more and more talk and conversation. And New York Times, I don't think they had a single piece about hallucinogens, anything positive in 20 years. All of a sudden, they got columnists writing a piece, they got the ecstasy thing, then they had a piece about the medical use of hallucinogens that was quite positive. But USA Today, any of you see that almost full-page op-ed they wrote by a woman talking about her own marijuana use in a way that was so glowing? A cigarette company would have paid her billions of dollars for There's something coming out. Now, mind you, though, the problem here is this is a risky conversation. I remember 12, 13 years ago, I started talking about this stuff. People say, Ethan, be careful. If you get labeled the next Timothy Leary, you're dead. And quite frankly, we have this very difficult dance to do right now. This conversation, this opening up, this coming out about marijuana use, this talking about the positives and about the hallucinogens, about ecstasy, whatever, it has to happen. But on the other hand, the groups that advocate for legal reform, if they get too close to that and become identified as not reform, but pro-drug use groups, that's problematic. Because remember, we're trying to reach not just the people who know this stuff can be fun and good. We're trying to reach the people. And you heard me say it before. We don't win this thing. We reformers do not win this. We don't win this struggle unless a majority of American parents come to believe that what we have to say and what we are advocating does more to protect their kids than what the other guys are saying. We don't win unless we pull that up. We don't win by celebrating the positive values of marijuana. Sure, we believe on some level that a lot of people sitting in Capitol Hill would probably have their sex lives improved by the occasional use of marijuana. Responsible use, I'm talking about. But we can't be out there saying that. We can't. They have to figure it out themselves. Or somebody else has to tell them that. But as reform organizations, we cannot be seen as pro-drug organizations. And quite frankly, many of my organization's members, many of my staff do not use drugs, don't want to do it. It has to be the argument to them as well. Black people are minority in this country. Civil rights won because a significant number of white people came along. Gay people are making progress not because they're becoming the majority, but because a significant part of the majority is beginning to empathize and feel that they should not be discriminated against. And ultimately, our principle we embrace, not because the majority of Americans are using these drugs that are now illegal, or even because they're comprehending that illegal drug use and legal drug use are that far apart, but simply because they're beginning to accept the principle that their fellow citizens should not have their freedom taken away simply because they use this. It's why continually addressing the harms of drug use even as we address the harms of prohibition. Never forgetting we need a double-barreled message on this thing. My organization is deeply involved. We have a project right now in trying to prevent heroin overdose deaths. That's probably the cutting-edge project in the country. Our website, when it comes to methadone maintenance, is the best in the world. Right? On needle exchange, Soros has put millions of dollars. He's put as much money into needle exchange as he's put into medical marijuana. I think that's fair to say. Right? It's important. And now on drug education, what Marsh is doing with, safety first and just say no, but KNOW, dealing with teenagers, right? It's because we are the cutting edge of addressing the risky aspects and the dangerous aspects of drug use. You know why Alan Leshner, the head of NIDA, gets pallid and looks sickly anytime the name of Linda Smith DPF comes out? It's not just because we're winning medical marijuana in Prop 36. It's because on a whole host of areas like needles and AIDS and heroin overdose prevention and methadone maintenance, whatever, NIDA's copped out and we are the lead organization. If you pull out the last 6 reports that the National Academy of Science, National Research Council, Institute of Medicine, National Academy of Science, and its 2 subdivisions have put out on drug issues, on marijuana in the early 1980s, on medical marijuana a couple years ago, on needle exchange, on drug treatment, on drug testing, and on methadone maintenance specifically. And you then ask, look at their conclusions and recommendations, and then ask which organization in America is most associated with advocating for the recommendations of the National Academy of Science panels. ONDCP? NIDA? No. Joe Califano's Institute? No. Linda Smith DPF? Yes. We are doing this. Now this comes down to this point, and this comes, by the way, to how we link our radical side and our very pragmatic, harm reduction, public health, science-driven. The model organization is, and we believe in drug policies based upon common sense, science, public health, and human rights. Those are our values. Common sense, science, public health, and human rights. Now, I'll tell you something interesting with Gary Johnson in New Mexico, right? He popped out a year and a half ago. What did he say? He said, let's legalize marijuana. No, maybe I meant legalize everything. His numbers dropped 15 points, and from as far as we could tell, a lot of people stopped listening. Gary Johnson started listening, and he started educating himself. He started learning something about harm reduction. He started learning about needle exchange. He gave a new task force, he appointed a new mandate, coming up with a new bottom line drug policy based upon harm reduction principles and practices, reducing the harms of drugs and of drug prohibition. Gary Johnson can now talk with greater fluency about AIDS, needle exchange, methadone maintenance, heroin overdose prevention, etc., than any other governor in America. When he introduced 8 bills in January, 4 of which went through on drug treatment, heroin overdose prevention, and access to sterile syringes. By the way, in the rest of those bills, medical marijuana, marijuana decrim, Prop 36 asset forfeiture reform, we never lost a vote in New Mexico. Every single committee vote and every single floor vote went our way. We were 20-0. Medical marijuana passed both houses and they bottled it up in the last 24 hours. Marijuana decrim got through. We never lost a vote, and we got close and we got a few more shots. But you know what happened there? Gary Johnson and the whole system that got behind this, they were talking about reducing the number of fatalities from heroin. They were talking about reducing the spread of HIV and hepatitis. They were talking about providing treatment instead of incarceration. When he got behind that and when he spoke with knowledge, there was an educational process that went on in the state of New Mexico, and his poll numbers started going up. Of course, there was a fire that he dealt with in a nice way too that helped, but his poll numbers started going up. And he dropped his more radical message. He legitimized his more radical message by carrying the load on the halfway steps, on the little steps, on the steps that were addressed to people's immediate needs today. That's who we are. We are talking about the pragmatic steps of today and tomorrow that we can win and that we can do at the state and local level in order to reduce the harms of drug abuse and the harms of prohibition. And we are linking that with our more principled and far-reaching message, always ensuring as best we can that these steps go hand in steps with those. I think that's what it's about. Now, the last thing I'm going to say is, and this is a major challenge for me now,